Hey, what's up? It's your boy Elijah. Welcome back to another edition of Glenz's How I See It. Mainly, the episode is Humble Dad, and it's been a while since I did one of these, but had to get back in the chair and in the studio to give you all some good content on dads doing their thing and rocking it out for their family, and had to bring my homie from college. I mean, this guy was the first person to do like my website back in, I think it was like 2000, almost 20 years ago, if not 20 years ago. Been following him and what he's been doing. Incredible dad. Matter of fact, he just got through being with his son at a baseball game. And if you know anything about going to a baseball game, I mean, you sacrificing your life because it is hot out there. All right, now I want to welcome none other than Mr. Alistair. What it do, homie?
What's up, man?
I'm good, dude. I'm good. I really appreciate you giving me some of your time.
Yeah, man. I mean, I feel like I'm official now, right? I've been waiting to be a humble bad dad for a minute, so I'm like, you're like, man, I got to get started. I got all these other priorities. As soon as I get started, you can be my first guest. You made true on that promise, so I feel
Yeah,
official now.
I appreciate that for sure, man. Let's get into it. All right. So the first question I always ask every guest is, what do you feel like the difference between a dad and a father is?
Ooh, that's a good one, man. I mean, I feel like it is that you become a dad the minute. Well, okay, just put it this way. So I feel like it is that you become a father the minute it is that you conceive a child with somebody, right?
Okay. Okay.
And then I feel like it is that you become a dad whenever it is that you're filling all the duties that it takes in order to be able to make sure that your family is taken care of, right? Especially your children, right? But I'd say your whole entire family, because I think you could put some of the things in place ahead of time in your life that sets you up to be a dad. Like I was already picturing myself before it is I had kids, because I married into kids. I was already setting up what kind of dad that I wanted to be, right? And so it was easy to be able to implement that once it is that I actually had kids. So yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, so you're telling me that you always wanted to. That would mean that you always wanted to be a dad, and you was preparing to be a dad. So walk me through, how was it that you came to a point of where you wanted to be a dad? What age was that? Did you say,
Oh
you know
man,
what, I
so
want to be a dad
13
and
is
then
when I
begin?
started. Age 13 is when I started my first business, right? And I have an
Yeah.
amazing dad, amazing dad. But he had being the first black vice president of the union for CWA, Communication Worker of America, because he worked for AT&T. He was a pole guy, worked on the poles,
Oh wow.
and then moved into the union side, and then worked his way up the ranks without a college education to be the first black officer, and then the first black vice president of the union for Dallas
Oh
for
wow.
the Communication Workers of America, which means that he had to work 3 times harder than everybody else to be able to prove that he's there, because it's an elected position now. So not only are you a paid position, but it's also an elected position. So every couple of years, I think it was, he had to run for the position. So he's having to prove himself while he's there, and then he's having to prove himself that he can actually be reelected to the position. And luckily, there's no term limits on it. So he was in there for a long time. But because
That's
it's that he had to work so hard, he missed out on some of the stuff that as a kid you don't understand what's going on at the time, right? Now I can understand. I can look back and I say, oh, okay, he had to provide, he had to, everything else. As a kid, when he can't make it to the soccer game, you just remember the fact that he can't make it for a soccer game, right? And
yeah.
all of that. And I hold on, I'm trying to adjust and making sure it doesn't.
No, you're
You can't
fine,
hear
man.
me here.
So that's crazy. So at 13, you're thinking about being a dad because you have a good dad.
Yeah, exactly. But I have a dad that works so hard that he can't actually. Oh my man! I had to switch over to the phone for last minute. There we go. I had a
No
dad that
worries.
works so hard that he can't necessarily be at everything that he wants to. And he told me he wanted to be there, but he also explained to me the fact that I'm running the system, right? I got to be able to pay the bills and everything else like that. So I got frustrated one day, and told my dad, I was like, "Look, man, I never want to work as hard as you work." Right? It was just like in a moment of fun. I think he didn't make it to a soccer game or something like that because he had to
Yeah.
work. And I was like, I never want to be able to have to miss out on my kid's soccer game. He said the only way that you can do that is if you become an entrepreneur. Like, don't let somebody else control your schedule and everything else. You make your own schedule. He said it in my head at that point that I was going to be an entrepreneur. Right? It was already done. I already had little side hustles all throughout elementary school that I did, selling erasers, selling pencils. But once he planted that seed in my head, I was determined at that point that I was going to be an entrepreneur. And so that way I could make sure that I was able to be at all the stuff for my kids. Right. And so, like I said, I was already thinking about the process of why I wanted to be, but I was always modeling after the amazing dad that my dad was. Always there to support me. He's the one that helped me start my first business, got my business cards, everything else. And the coolest thing is that he put me in front, when he didn't know what it was, he would put me in front of mentors or people that he knew that had the knowledge that he didn't have, which is probably the best thing that he can do me. Something I still do to this day. I still look for mentors, right? And so my dad was great in that aspect, but I was determined that I was going to, be there as much stuff as I can. So it was in my head from day one.
That's crazy. So, okay. All right. So I'm gonna come to where when you decided to marry into a family, and then I'm gonna come backwards, right?
Okay.
Kind of walk me through your decision to marry with a family in place.
That was a God thing, man. I was a young guy. I didn't get married till 30, right? So I was already an entrepreneur, already grinding, had a chance to be able to work overseas for 10 months, had just came back from working overseas, had said, I'm done with focusing on anything else besides my business, right? I had this checklist of what it is that I wanted out of a woman and what it is I wouldn't do. And dating a woman that did have kids was not on my list of things that I would even wanted to do. Right. And then it's funny because when me and my wife met, she had 2. So it broke all the rules. Right? But it doesn't really matter that it broke all the rules. It's just a matter of the fact that I decided. Right. Did you get me? Did you lose me?
Yeah, I got you. No, I got you.
Yeah. And it was like I made a decision and I said, you know what, God, I'm going to put all this in your hands. Business in your hands, life in your hands. Guide me where it is that you led me. And right when I got back from Finland, I met Wendy, and the rest is history, man. Fell in love with her, fell in love with the kids at the same time. And they were 3 and 7 whenever it is that we got married. So.
Wow. So what was it about her or her kids that made you make her want to be your wife?
Nah, dude. What was attractive to me, as much as she's beautiful, of course, but the fact that she was independent, like she was out there doing the thing as a single mom, like she didn't need anybody. She was working a salary job, and her kids were everything in her world, right? I always laugh because I'm the technology guy. She didn't have a computer or email, right? Because it was about her kids. Like she would go to work, and then she'd come home, she'd take care of her kids. They would just do their thing in their world. So whenever I met her, I'm a tech guy, and I'm like, all right, so what's your email address? You don't have an email. I was like, all right, so what do you use to set up your computer? She's like, I don't have a computer. She was like nose to the grindstone, but she always made sure her kids were taken care of. And that is extremely attractive to me, along with all of her other amazing traits that she had, right? And it was just throughout the dating process. And she also was very adamant on, we're going to date before it is that you meet the kids and everything else like that. And like I said, I mean, once it is that I met them, I knew that if I was going to be in their life, I had to be, and because the father figure was not in their life, then I said I have to fill in that space, even from whenever we were dating up until the moment where it is I proposed, right?
So wow. So okay, so that's what's up. Okay, so let's go back to when you was maybe like elementary. Talk to me about who your dad was and what made him dope, or what did you learn from him? Or what was one of the memories that sticks out about him in elementary?
So much, man. There's so much that I learned from him. The main thing it is that he always loved to serve people, right? And he always taught me to be able to do more, and my grandma taught me this too, to be able to leave it better than how it is that you found it, right? Okay. So he was always one of those people that would go above and beyond, but he was an amazing connector of people. Like people came to him because he always either had the connection or the hookup or the whatever else. He also taught me the art of the hustle and the grind. He always had side stuff going on, always legal, but he always had something going on because he grew up. He was the oldest of, I can't even remember. I think he's the oldest of 10, right? And the oldest of a lot of kids, right? And so he's always been in that provider role. So he taught me how it is to be able to be, as the oldest, that provider as well. So just watching him and how he married people. One of my favorite stories about my dad is we went to, we were getting an oil change at like a Firestone, right?
How old were you at this
we're
time?
sitting in the lobby.
How old were you at that time?
I was probably about 13. I was probably around the same age. No, I had to be younger. It's probably about 11 because about Alex age.
So like elementary.
Yeah, and so we're sitting in the lobby at the Firestone or someplace to be able to get oil change or car repair or something like that. And there's a broom sitting in the corner. And so my dad picks up the broom and he starts sweeping up the lobby. Right? And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, we're sitting here, the broom is there, you know what I mean? And the lobby is dusty and a mess. Might as well sweep it up while we're sitting here, right?
What?
And then after he finished sweeping it up and put in the dustpan and everything else, of course he made me help him. The guy comes out, he's like, who cleaned up the lobby? Like, this is the guy who owns the shop. Comes out, he's like, who cleaned up the lobby? My dad's like, oh, I just did it. I was sitting here, whatever else. He's like, man, for that, I'm gonna go ahead and knock 20% off of your bill, whatever else, and so on and so forth and everything. Now, my dad wasn't expecting that. It wasn't like he
basically got paid for sweeping their office.
Right. But just to leave the office, the guy knocked 20% off the bill, and they became instant friends. And then my dad used that guy for the longest time, and he knew it's just his ability to be able to serve without expecting. It would always come back around. And he turned it into lesson.
I'm hearing that, but I want to repeat what you just said. You said serve without expecting. Without expecting.
Yeah.
I want people to hear that. Like, if you serving, there is not a need to expect anything, because things will happen because you're serving.
Happen. Yeah. Every time.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want that right there was a major.
That's a golden nugget, man.
Go ahead and finish your thought, though.
I like to say it always shows back up in your life at some point in time. It doesn't have. Most of the time, it's not immediately. Like, that was just an immediate example, but every time it is that I've served others, it's always showed back up in my life. And it may not be something that's obvious. It may not be something that I'm, expecting, or even later on, I'll relate the two together, right? But whenever it is that you serve with it, but the key part is the without expecting. If you serve expecting to be able to get something in return, like he had went to him and said, hey, I swept up this office. What are you going to do for me? It's a different thing, but it was just who it is that he is in every aspect of his life. He's always like that. He's always willing to help somebody. He was the guy who it is that if we saw a homeless guy, we'll give him the bottled water or whatever else, and so on and so forth. Something that I've taken on and something that I pass on to my kids as well. And I just think it's an amazing trait. And so that, in a nutshell, is who my dad is. The person who has always made sure that to provide, was always there. Anything that I wanted to do when I started becoming a DJ, he was the one that put up half of the money for my DJ equipment. When I wanted to start any business, he's the one that was, there to be able to, like I said, if he didn't know, he would put the right things in place. Whenever it is that I wanted to start a nutrition club, he's the one that said, okay, we're going to go in on the nutrition club, make it a family. But you know what I mean? So anything it is that I've ever wanted to do, he was there to support me. But he was also be the first one there to put me straight if it is if I wasn't doing something right. It wasn't all, rainbows. He made sure that he get the Caribbean, right? So he's gonna tell you like it is, right? And so I love that whole aspect about my dad, and that's why I give him a lot of credit of who I am today. I give a lot of credit to my dad for that. So.
Yeah, I can see when you start talking about like the service piece and the connector of people, I definitely saw and understand your character and who you are now. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what you try to do. Since we've been back in contact with each other, trying to connect me to people, and then me hearing about you trying to connect others to people. So that's pretty dope, because that was a lesson that was learned at 11. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's being implemented now. So when you get to the point of like middle school, do you remember like a golden nugget that your dad gave you?
Middle school golden nugget that my dad
maybe
gave.
12 to 14. Or an event, you know what I'm saying?
So one of the things my dad taught me is that if there's something that you could do about it, do it. Otherwise, there's no reason to complain about it. Right? like there's no, I mean, if you could do something about it, do it. If you're not going to be able to do something about it, why are you complaining? Because you can't do nothing about it, right? And it's something that I heard in personal development later on. I was like, dude, did they listen to my dad? You know what I mean? My dad told me this. I mean, they said it a lot more smooth than he did, but they put the quotes and everything else like that. But I mean, I still, to this day, I put in two categories: things I can do something about, things I can't do something about. If I can do something about, I take some kind of action, even if it's a small action, towards making that change. If it's something I can't do anything about, is there anything that I can do, put processes in place, or people that I can connect in order to? If not, why am I stressing about it? Because I can't do anything about it at this moment in time. There's so many things in your world that you missed out on by stressing on things that you can't control. Yeah. And you're missing all the little stuff that you can control, that you can make better. I had this conversation with a good friend the other day. I was like, you're missing out on all these signs of stuff that's going on in your life because you're so busy focused on what's going on overseas. You're so busy focused on all this other stuff that you're just stressing, and you're stressing yourself in circles, right? So
absolutely. So control what you can control is basically what you're saying, because if you deal with the things that you can't control, you're wasting a lot of energy not being using it for the things that you can control.
that's it.
You know,
that's it.
And worry, as you talked about when we interviewed before, you know, stress is a killer. Like, that's not just a saying. That is that's a true thing, you know.
It is.
And so, yeah, I think that's a very good nugget to learn in middle school, because middle school is when you're transitioning. There's a lot of, like, that's puberty right there, you know, and there's a lot of things going on. You know what I'm saying? So that's what's up. I like that particular nugget. Control what you control. So when we get to high school, like, your dad, is he still going to work by this? I mean, he probably is.
Yeah,
he's at work, and
he
he's not
didn't
able to
actually
make
retire.
these
He
events.
didn't retire until I was well into college and
Okay.
graduated from college at this point. So all throughout, I was the small kid. Like, I didn't get my growth spurt until the end of my freshman year in high school, right?
Okay.
So I was a little bitty guy, right? And I had the thick glasses. It is trendy now. I tell my kids it's funny because they're wearing glasses. They don't have to now. And I was trying to get rid of them as quickly as I can, right? And so all throughout middle school and high school, I was like the nerdy, smart guy. So I used comedy, and I used my ability to be able to make friendships, to be able to get around that. And my dad taught me that. He's like, you don't have to be the fastest guy or the strongest guy, but if you can find a way to be able to connect with the fastest and the strongest guy, then you're good to go, right? Like, if you can find a way to be able to make the fastest guy and the strongest guy connect. He also taught me the whole, now I call it hurt people, right? But he said, if somebody's picking on you or whatever else, it's not you, it's something else in their life that either you represent or something else in their life that they are taking out on you for. And that helped me not to be able to take it so personally whenever it is that people would come after me just because I happen to be the smallest, nerdiest looking guy, right?
Yeah.
And so I learned to be able to befriend or to be able to get on my side the biggest guy in high school, one of the biggest guys in high school, and that's how it is. And then just being able to know him. I didn't have to run in his circle. I didn't want to run in his circle. He was trouble. But just be able to know him and to have an association with him helped me to be able to navigate a lot of situations that would have been very uncomfortable for me. This guy was huge, right? Wow. Huge, right? But I made him laugh. And I stood up to him once, and I thought I was going to die. Right? But he said, I like you. I don't know what it is about it, but I like you, right?
That's
and then I made sure I made him laugh every time it is that I saw him, right? And just my association with him it gave me a free pass. Plus, I got contacts, and I shaved my head, and so I completely changed up my look, too. So that helped, too, in high school as well. But my dad was the one that taught me that it's not really about you, because I would internalize it. I would take it all personally all throughout middle school or whatever else when people were picking on it, right?
That reminds me of is it Cunningham? There was I don't know, you remember Happy Days?
Yeah.
And he got cool with the Fonz.
Yeah.
People would, you know what I'm saying, people would make fun of, would maybe bother him, but because he had the Fonz on his side, you know, things were kind of different. That's what that kind of think. That's what comes to mind when you say that. But that's interesting, because like I got picked on definitely when I was, because I'm a little guy, but I got picked on definitely from middle school through high school, and I didn't have that idea of, you know, get to know people more. I actually withdrew from people because I was getting bullied. And so it just made it even that much worse, right? So I totally, that makes sense. So when you got to the point of deciding on what college you wanted to go to, what was the conversation with your dad?
So, like, I was always taught that right after high school comes college. Like, there was no option for me. My dad didn't get a chance to go to college, right?
Okay.
My mom had her master's degree. She's in teaching, and she's in education. So it was like high school and college. Like, you have the ability to be able to get the scholarships. You have the ability to be able to do whatever. So I just thought that's what comes next. Ever since as far as I can remember, I had the high school pennants on my wall, and my college pennants on my wall, and I thought I was going to go to either Georgetown or I had my mom's best friend, which we called her Grandma Jackson. She was the dean of Tougaloo College, right, on Mississippi. So I had Tougaloo. I didn't even know anything about Tougaloo besides the fact I thought I was going to go there because she was over
it. Tupelo? Is it
Tougaloo, Mississippi? Right.
You know what's crazy about that? My mentor, that's where he's from. And he invests there that's where he invests in.
That's awesome. Crazy. That's a small world, right? Small world. Yeah. And so I had, I thought I loved the Georgetown Hoyas. I just loved their whole mascot and everything else. And then at some point I thought I was going to go to SMU as well. So I saw that price tag and my scholarship was going to cover it all. And so, and then I thought I was going to go to Tech. I was going to go to Texas Tech. And so I went out there and they had a mud storm. A mud storm is when they have a sandstorm and a rain storm at the same time. It became a mud storm. And I was like, wow. The way my allergies set up,
that can't happen.
I'm out. Wow. And and SFA was one of the ones that gave me the biggest scholarship, Stephen F. Austin, because that's our alma mater. And that's why I went and took a look at them. And they were 3 hours away. So it's far enough away from home where it is that I could actually go away and still get back home quickly. Tech was a little far for me as well, right?
Yeah, it was like 8 hours. Was that 8 hours?
Yeah, 8 to 10, depending on where it is that you're at, right? Yeah. Stephen F. Austin was 3, so that was good. And then I went to the campus. I fell in love really with the campus and the culture and everything else. Whenever it is, the visit is what nailed it in for me for SFA, right? That, and I talked to the head of, at the time it was the Black Student Union. I talked to the head of that, and I was really into, I had created the African American Student Association at my high school, and so I was really into making that transition to being really involved. And it was actually Roderick. What is Roderick's last name? With the Kappa, Roderick. Yeah, I think so. He caught me in the hallway at SFA when I was touring through it, about to go, and he caught me. And my mom, she's bold with it. She just grabbed her. She's like, "Okay, young man, can you tell him a little about this campus and how Black student life is on this campus?" And he took the time to stop and really break it down for me about the campus. And the fact that he was willing to do that was a big push. I have to tag him on this after it is I'm finished with it, right? And so.
I don't know if it was Park. I can't remember his last name, but it sounds familiar. That name sounds definitely.
Yeah, you'll recognize him once I tag him. Yeah. Roger, shout out to you, brother. You know who he is.
That's what's up. Yeah, and at that time when we went, it wasn't a lot of us there.
No.
And so for him to take the time out to talk to you, because I had some dudes that I remember that would not talk to me.
Right, right.
But for him, and so for him to take the time to talk to you coming in, that was a big deal. I think that for me, the reason why I went to SFA was because my cousin was going. Like, it had nothing to do with
whatever it takes, right?
I had no idea. I didn't know nothing about no prices. You know what I'm saying? I thought it was in Austin. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know.
I knew that the scholarship would cover it, at least for the first 2 semesters.
Yeah.
And then my parents said, "We'll help you after that. Then after that, you're on your own, right?" It's like you got to figure it out, right? You either got to get more scholarships. My parents fell right in that middle class where it is that I couldn't qualify for a lot of the student loans, but because they made too much, but they didn't make enough to be able to pay for my college, right? They fell in that gap, I like to call it, of people in between there, right? So I had to do it, and I didn't have really, really strong, even though I was smart. School kind of bored me a little bit. It didn't feed into my entrepreneur side. So I didn't have really strong grades in high school. I had good enough grades, right? In high school, right? I didn't shine. My GPA didn't shine until I got my master's degree. Then I graduated with almost a 5.0. But we won't talk about what my college GPA was.
Hey, listen, my college GPA was trash, bro.
It was horrible. Especially SFA, because SFA, the first 2 years I did great because I was scared of my parents. And then once I got comfortable and I realized that I could pull off going to class and having a lot of fun, and then you throw in pledging and all the other stuff too as well, it got kind of a little bit sketchy there. But then my master's degree, I like to make up for. So when people ask me about GPAs, I just talk about that.
Yeah, that's same here. When I went to SFA, and I had started my business when you was helping me. I had started that my sophomore year, and so in my mind, okay, this is what it's gonna be. So all I gotta do is just get this degree. Right. And so I just I was like, okay, I'm just trying to get these C's so I can get out. And it was definitely evident in
So,
my
so here's the cool thing. Going back to my dad in college and everything else like that. So my dad is not a computer guy. He's not a technology guy. He's a jack of all trades guy. Like
okay.
he's a do it yourself, change the oil yourself. If it needs to be done in the house, we're gonna figure it out and do it type of guy, right? Because that's how he grew up. All of his uncles in the islands, they all build stuff, and that's just who it is that he is, right? I'm the tech guy. I was not that guy. But he made me do it with him, which taught me all the skills that I need now. Like we just got a new house to be able to do most of the stuff myself that I wouldn't have if I hadn't done it with him, right? So he wasn't a technology guy, but he always put me in front of tech people. So when I went to school, Stephen F. Austin, I went on a computer science degree, which I did not know programming and physically working on computers were two totally different things. So I very quickly changed to a business major after I figured out how much science and math computer science takes, and Fortran and COBOL and all those languages that killed me. They slaughtered it. I was like, nope, not for me. But I got it. He taught me to find people in your field. Remember I told you he always taught me to find mentors. So I went to the computer lab. And I just hung around the computer guys till they gave me a job working in the computer lab, because I knew I could get, these are the guys that know how it is to be able to put together computers and servers. And I knew I wanted to get in that direction. And there was nothing, like you said, there's nothing in Nacogdoches, Texas that has to do with servers. There's no jobs. Like you can go to Best Buy, you know what I mean, or anything like that.
So I think it may have been a Circuit City in Lufkin. And then
you have to drive, and I didn't have no gas money to get everything right.
For real.
And so I just went and hung around them until a job opening, and I got a job there, which opened up the door for me to be able to get the job at Berry Direct on the floor. I brought some memories when I said Berry Direct. Right? There's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna be blowing up the comments for Berry Direct. But Berry Direct opened. They said it was a call center. And I tried to get into the IT at the call center. And they said they didn't have any IT positions, but we'll put you on the floor. And then when something opens up, then we'll let you know. They were just trying to get more people working on the floor. They had no urge to put me into the IT, because these are all salary positions. It was owned by Bell South at the time. But they didn't know me, right? They didn't know who I was, right? So I could sell pretty much anything. So I'm breaking records on the floor, trying to get the attention of the people who it is that make the decisions. Another thing my dad taught me, right? You do the best at wherever it is that you're at. So I'm aiming for the top spot, and they're changing comp structures to try and get me out of making so much money, because I'm almost making as much money as my manager just for the commission structure, right? So they had to keep on changing commission structure because the managers are getting upset. But what I did, same thing I did with the computer lab, I started going and having lunch with the IT guys. Like when it was lunch, I told them to give my lunch break at the same time I noticed what time they were going to go. And I started going to have lunch and hanging out with these IT guys. I was like, yeah, man, I used to work at the computer lab. And they're like, ha, 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 little guy. I'm a junior in college, right? And so they're like, yeah, okay, this is nice that you're hanging out with us. And so one day we were all at lunch. And I was like, dude, if any of y'all ever quit, the only thing I ask is that y'all put my name in as one of your replacements, right?
Wow.
And they're like, yeah, we'll do that, man. We'll do that. It was just throwing my name in the hat. I was just like, dude, just plug me as one of, I'm cool people. Y'all know my work ethic and everything else like that. Well, one of the assistant managers quit. And he went out in a fiery flame. Like he took their system down off wide on his way out. And he said, if you want your stuff back up, the only thing I have to request on my way out is that y'all hire Alistair as a position. Like he literally had their system down, and they couldn't do anything unless it was a little bit of a shady kind of blackmail type of thing, I think, that was going on. And this is all off the record, by the way, even though we're on a podcast. and so anyways, he said, I want you to hire Alistair in. And the manager at the time, who I'd also, the big manager, the big guy that worked for Bell South, who I'd also had lunch and everything with, he's like, man, I don't know if we're going to do it. You're a junior in college. There's a lot of variables that you have going on, and you could burn out tomorrow, and then I'm in trouble, right? And he's like, you got to hire him. That's my terms, right? Wow. And so he brought me in. He's like, I'm gonna give you a base salary of like $23,000. I'm balling. Junior in college making $23,000 a year, man.
Listen,
from a $9 an hour desk job. I was like, I'll take it.
Especially it's something that you enjoy doing too.
Yeah. And so and then he calls me back in the week before I'm about to start, and he said, man, I got some news for you. And I'm like, dang it, man. He told me he couldn't get Bell South to push it through. He's I'm like, I'm going through it all my scenario in my head. Oh, why it is it? And he said, the base salary for this position starts at 30. So I'm gonna have to start you at 30. I was like, and he's like, gotcha. He's like, you thought I was gonna fire you, didn't you? I'll give you a raise before you even get in. Right?
Look
And
at
so
that.
that's how I got it. My first salary job working for Bell South was just by following those same skills that my dad had, making those relationships, hanging out with the people, and then throwing my name in the hat. It was a bold thing for me to say, guys, I want a job, you know what I mean? And I had no clue that it was gonna work, but it did.
Your dad, like man, your dad was implementing so many skill sets.
Seeds. He's planting all the seeds, right?
Yeah, but also like, to build rapport with people that you don't don't necessarily rock with you in that manner. Like that takes some courage and some boldness. And so that's what I'm saying. Like for your dad to implement those things into you, and then for you to apply them, transition you to move into the space that you're in now. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So that's dope. So I want to get to now. I want to kind of so it was about 10 years later from there that you got married, and now you're a dad.
Yeah.
Okay. Like you're a dad right at the time that you get married. So how was the relationship before marriage with the kids? Like what was the conversation with the wife about how if you were gonna be able to discipline? Like what was that conversation?
That was the other thing that was attractive, is that she always taught them to respect me as an authority figure, even before we got married. Right. Okay. So I was a father figure in their life before it is that we got married. And they were open to that too, as well, because they didn't have that in their life, right? And again, I had to be real careful because I knew stepping into that shoes was something that could really mess some people up, right? If it is that you have people going in and out of your life and so on and so forth. That's why she was so protective about who it is that she brought around her kids, because she understood that too. So you have 3 and 7. Those are very, very crucial ages, you know what I mean, where it is that you're self-shaping and structuring young people's lives, right? So
it's a boy and a girl.
Really,
it's a boy and a girl, right?
Yeah, boy and a girl. Girl was 3, and the boy was 7.
Okay, right? Okay. And then that's a big deal too for her to bring in a dude when she has a daughter. You know what I'm saying?
So even before it is that we got married and everything else, I did the father-daughter dance with her because she asked me to be able to go, right? And so these little bitty things where it is that I just showing up is. I tell people, look, 90% of what we do as parents is guessing. The other 10% is showing up. Like 90% is guessing. We're guessing based on what we know. We're guessing based on what we read. We're guessing based on what we thought was right. We're guessing based on what we feel like at the moment, which is definitely not right.
I can see
the emotions that are going on at the moment that it happens usually are the ones that lead us wrong. But that's just all guesswork, right? But showing up, I would even say that 50% of it is showing up, and 50% of it is guessing. But if you could just show up and be there, that's the things that people remember. They don't remember any of the other stuff besides you actually being there for them when they need you to be there for them. So my job before it is that we got married was just to be able to show up whenever they asked me, when the kids asked me to show up, to make sure that it is that I'd show up, or if I didn't, I did my best to be able to make up the reason why. And that was my dad was good at. Whenever it is that he couldn't show up, he would always try and make up in some other way, shape, or form. Because his job was literally, if they called him to be able to go on a trip, he had to go. Right. And that's why it is that he missed so much stuff. It's because it was he had to be there. Whenever they said jump, he had to jump to be able to prove his position. But he always made it up whenever it is that he came back. Right. And so I had to be able to make sure it is that I showed up. Or if I couldn't show up, if I didn't show up, because I'm still at the realm at this point, still my clients say, I need you. I had a lot of clients in Houston. I need you in Houston. I had to go too. I always made sure that somehow I made it up if I could. Right.
So as you get to the parenting stage of parenting a boy and a girl, walk me through, or give me an example, I would say, of a time when you had to one, encourage them and what that looked like. And then another way is like when you had to discipline them at 7 and 3, and what did that look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's funny because, encouraging them is the easy part. You always, the trait my dad taught me is always find a
It's not that easy, bro.
Huh?
It ain't that easy. That's because of your dad. It may be easy because of your dad, because it kind of depends on how you was raised as it relates to easy. Because
okay, so let's say it's simple. I won't say it's easy. I won't say it's easy. I say it's simple. It's a simple process to do, right? Well, simple is not always easy, right? Yeah. The simple process is always find a way to be able to compliment somebody. Find something positive about what it is they do. And then my part that I learned from it, because again, my dad's a Caribbean dad, he's direct and straightforward, right? So I switched that around and I always found a way to compliment before it is that I had some kind of adjustment to make. He give it to me straight, right? Yeah. But I found a way to be able to do it. So finding a way to compliment forces you to be able to look at the good stuff in your kids. We always want to talk about what it is that our kids need to do, but we don't realize that we have amazing kids already, right? But we're so busy looking at what it is that they're not doing. They're not cleaning up. They're not listening. They're not. It's easy to get stuck in that. And then that's when you sound like a broken record because you're always correcting them. But when you start looking at how amazing and some of the amazing things that your kids do and the amazing people that they are, and you start forcing yourself to be able to give compliments based on that. This is hard for us as guys because we were growing up as push down our emotions, right? And don't show it. Showing emotions is weakness and everything else like that. But when you force yourself to be able to constantly compliment your kids, constantly compliment your spouse, constantly compliment your coworkers, constantly compliment the people who it is that you work with, and you start looking for the good in people, then you'll see more good in people. If you're always looking for the bad in people and the bad in the situation and how people are treating you bad, guess what you're going to find more of? You're going to find more of that bad stuff. If you're more around people, I hear people, it hurts my heart when I hear people say, I have a bad kid and he's so horrible and everything else like that. First of all, your kid hears you saying that, and so they think that's who they are. So they're going to do more of who they think than who they are, right? Not only that, you're speaking this to other people, and so what is your brain focused on most of the time? How bad they are and how bad they're going to be. But when you start talking about, I have an amazing kid who sometimes gets off track, but we're helping him to be able to get to the right place. There's a whole different vibe and energy of that. Sometimes he makes the wrong decisions, but he always comes back and recorrects himself and gets back on the right path. When a kid hears that, then they know it's okay to be able to make a bad decision as long as it is I can come back to the right path. Whatever you speak, whatever you put out there is what it is that you attract more of, and that has to do with your kids too. Whatever it is that you put out there, especially in front of them, is what it is that there's going to be more.
Your kids want to know how you view them, and one of the ways that they know that is really when you are encouraging them or talking to them. There was like with my kids, I have 4, and I remember this one particular time. I was conversing with my oldest, my daughter. She's 12, and she plays softball, and I was talking to her about her effort. It's like we've talked about this several times. That your effort is what's going to help you overcome mistakes. Like if you make a mistake, at least your effort, you made it you made a quick mistake, if you will, right? And I was telling her, I was riding home, I was like, man, I just don't understand why you won't listen, right? That's what my first initial, and I said, but I don't want to be too harsh on it, but I said, because you could be great. I said, you could be great, but because of your effort, that is what is stopping you from being great. Like I think the next game or something, or not too long thereafter, her effort was there. Even though there may have been a mistake, she made less mistakes because her effort was different. And like I told her, and I also said that was like one of the best games I've ever seen you play. I said, really? You know what I'm saying? And it uplifted her. Especially daughters, man. A man speaking into their life in a positive way changes their disposition about themselves. So that's a very, very key point that you're making.
I mentor a lot of young men and who don't have either had father figures in their life, don't have father figure in their life. Sometimes their father figures are incarcerated. Sometimes they never met their father figures, and they're still trying to impress their fathers.
Oh yeah.
Even the ones that aren't there are still trying to fill that gap of their father figure. So if you're in their life, then how powerful is it to you if it is that you show your kid that they're always impressing you, and speak. The pivotal moment in my adult life, now we're moving into my adult relationship with my father, is I got a chance to be able to get invited over to speak in Jamaica, right?
Oh, wow.
And I got to bring, and my dad's from Ireland, he's from Antigua, right? And so I got a chance to be able to bring him with me, right? All expense paid. They put us on like the Ritz-Carlton. It was big time, right? Well, in my mind, it was big time, right? But I got to take my dad with me. So we're going back to the islands. Now, we're not going to go big island versus small island, right? So Jamaica's a lot different than Antigua. So, but it was the fact that I got to bring him back to the islands to be able to speak, for him to see me. He had never seen me speak on stage. And he spoke too, because he had to speak in front of all the conferences and everything else. So he taught me the skills of that. For him to be able to see me, to be able to be the co-speaker on an event. My mentor was the one that invited me. And one of my mentors was also the one that was there in Jamaica, Dr. Tony Vendrius, and Dr. Dan, and Dan Waldron is the one that invited me. Tony Vendrius invited us to come be able to speak. And so two of my mentors, I get to speak in front of two of my mentors and my dad. You would have talked about like mind-blowing moment for me, right? And they put me on stage. They knew my dad was there, and they gave me all the sections. Like he was my mentor was the main speaker. He's just bringing me on as like an assistant speaker, right? And Dr. Vendriss and him switched up the whole agenda. Once we got there, said we got to get you on stage as much as possible. A, because we want to see what you can do. B, we're able to give you some feedback, right? A lot of real-time feedback. I was flying all around the United States speaking. They're like, this is where we get to be able to mentor you. And he mentored me, and not just on what to speak, but the timing of how it is I speak, how it is to control the energy of the crowd, how it is to go to your hotel room during lunch so you can still have energy for yourself. And then how it is to keep your energy so when you go home, you're not so spent that you don't have the energy for your family. Huge lesson that my mentor taught me. But my dad being there was a huge deal, right? And so I'm up on stage, and again, looking for that approval. I'm always looking to see what his face is like. Like there's all this crowd. There's at least almost 1,000 people in the room, but I'm like focusing on.
I only care about what Dad thinks.
I wanted to see what his response was, because I could deal with his feedback, right? He's nodding the whole time. So I was like, all right, I'm on. Okay, I got it, right? And plus, they speak a lot of patois in Jamaica, so there's a little bit of difference in the English. So I had to you can tell I get excited, so I had to slow so he would tell me, he'd be like, slow it down. You know what I mean? Your dad? Yeah, my dad. He's giving me the signals slow it down, because they're not being able to communicate. So he's giving me real-time feedback as well. But it was, and I almost couldn't finish the day. So we're walking out, and all these people were like, "Oh, you're his dad." You just see your chest up, everything else like that. And so a guy comes up and he said, "How does it feel to have your son up there on stage commanding the room?" And my dad starts crying. I had never seen my dad cry. Never seen my dad cry ever before, man. And I was like, dude, you can't I got to go up and do another section. You can't do this to me. And he started crying. He's like, I'm so proud. I'm just so proud. That's all he could get out. He's just crying, man. I'm almost getting emotional now, right? And that was like the pivotal moment right there. It's like, that's what it is I was waiting to be able to hear and to be able to experience. So if you can provide that for your kids on a regular basis, how much more will it recharge their batteries and give them the energy to go forward in life? And I always remember that moment. I always remember that moment where it is that, he was so overwhelmed by emotion and proudness of me. I felt like it is I had arrived at that point. It didn't matter how the rest of the day went. It didn't matter what my business was doing. Those are the moments. Those are the moments.
That's what's up. So what do you think that you've done? Kind of going back to that first question, that so you've been an encourager to your kids, and then tell me about how have you been have to discipline them, or is there a way that you discipline them, or do you have to discipline them?
I mean, and a lot of things I always ask questions. I like to ask a lot of questions, right? Because if I get you to realize, and you ask, the worst question you can ask somebody is, why did you do this? They don't know why. In the moment, it was the best decision that they could have made. That's why. I obviously thought that the punishment was not as big as the reward. That's why. But the kid's not going to tell you that. If they tell you that, you're going to be upset, right? So they're going to come with some kind of excuse, and it's not going to be really what it is. So I asked them, what could you have done differently in the situation, right? Okay. Or what needs to be adjustment? Like when your daughter wasn't putting in the effort, I've been like, so what do you think you could have done to make the outcome of the game different if they lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like whenever we do this with the kids whenever we're playing baseball. Like what is it that we need to be able to adjust, or name 5 things that you could have adjusted that would have made the outcome a little bit different, right?
That's good.
And then I say name 5 things that you did amazing that allowed you to do as well as it is that you did, right? I always end with the positive, right? So I try and ask them questions that are going to allow them to be able to see what it is that was wrong in the situation. Now,
and they also have to justify.
Yeah,
they have to present evidence of their
correct.
actions.
And then I said, okay, so what are you going to do different next time, right? That's my next thing. It's like, what are you going to do different next time? So that way, if they don't do what they said, I was like, okay, last time this happened, we said that this was the issue, and then we said, never you said, we said that this is what you're going to do different next. So tell me where the breakdown was, because we already had this discussion, right?
I'm taking that one, bro.
The breakdown was. I need to know where our conversation broke apart and why it is that stuff was different this time than it was, versus why did you do that, right?
Yeah.
And I remember one specific incident. My son, he was about 14 or so or whatever else. He was having some challenges. He was having some struggles, and he's the oldest, right? So I try and find ways to relate. I was the oldest too. I was like, look, your sister and your brother look up to you as the oldest, right? Whether it is that you like it, whether you like them, whether it is nothing, just know that, because my dad had this talk with me. He's like, that everything that you do, and it's funny because my brother and I are 10 years apart, of 9-ish half, and my oldest and my youngest son are 10 years apart too. Wow. And my dad had this conversation. He's like, he's
oldest
modeling
and youngest are 9 years apart also, by the way.
Yeah, nice. And so he's like, he's modeling everything it is that you do. He literally looks at everything that you do as, this is who it is I want to be and who it is that I do. And that changed me, man. That completely changed me. Like the music I listened to when I was around him, what it is, the movies I listen to, how it is I talk, all switched whenever it is I was around my brother. And I had to have that conversation with Austin too. I was like, look, he models everything that you say. And here's what we need from you being the oldest in the house. Wow. And this is what we need to be able to happen as you being the oldest. And this is what's not happening. So how do we get from point A to point B? Right. I remember we were sitting in the car outside, like, how do we get from point A to point B? Because there's a lot of stuff going. And if you need to talk, if you got some stuff going on in your life, you still got some stuff going on in your head, I'm here to support you. But we will not have intentional disobedience going on. we got an issue. Yeah. I remember so moving on to 16, 17, I'm getting ready to go off to college. I thought you couldn't tell me nothing, right? Couldn't tell me nothing. I do it all. And my dad had this conversation with me. There's only room for one man in this house. So anytime it is that you feel like you can become the man of the house, you got one or two choices. You can either try and take it away from me, or you can move out. Those are the two things. And you ain't taking it away. Wow. And you ain't taking it away from me. You ain't taking it away from me in my house. So that's the only other option that you had. I was like, yes, sir.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
So yes, sir. So we had that 14. I didn't tell him he had to get out at 14, but we had that conversation about, I understand that you're getting older and that you feel like it is you can take on more responsibility, and we will give you more responsibility when you show that you can handle it. But right now, you're not showing that. So we got to have a whole different conversation.
I really like that question.
If kids understand that you are the authority figure, but at the same time you respect the fact that they are trying, you'll get way more out of them versus just constantly just on them.
For sure. I like that question. What could you have done differently to make a better outcome?
Yeah.
I really like the questions.
I can't control what it is that you did. It's already done. But what could you do differently next time? And this way, before you make that decision, you'd be like, well, I said I could do this. Or do you just act blindly out of whatever is going on in your head whenever you act blind? Man, I can't explain half the stuff I did in my youth. Even now, as an adult, that made no sense, right? But at the time, I thought it was the best idea ever.
Absolutely. So we're going to transition to our fun questions, okay? So
all right, let's do it.
Need you to give me a number between 1 and 45.
1 and 45. See, you didn't go higher enough. I was like, you could say 100 and 63 was going to be.
I don't have 100 questions. If I had 100 questions, I definitely would have.
1 and 45. Let's go with 18.
What was the scariest moment you've ever had?
Ooh, scariest moment I ever had. Scariest moment. Okay, so I told you I spent 10 months over in Finland, right?
Yeah.
And then they told me, okay, I said I can't wait any longer. I was waiting to get a work visa there, and they were slow walking me. And they said, okay, if you go back, they took my passport while they were processing. For 10 months, I didn't have a passport. So they said, if anything happens to you You're pretty much on your own. You're in the country as a immigrant, right? I had a little yellow card. They don't have green cards. They have yellow cards. I had to go check in just like an immigrant. I got the full immigrant experience, right? But when I finally said, I'm ready to go home, I finally landed a big enough contract to pay for that expensive ticket back home, and I was excited. I went back and they handed me back my passport. And I was like, okay, so I need some paperwork that shows why I was in the country. It's only a 3-month visa. It's been 10 months. So I need some paperwork showing why I'm here. And they're like, we'll print out this little thing and we'll put a stamp on it. It looks like a stamp that you buy at Office Depot. They said, that's all we can give you. Everything else is just our word. I said, okay, well, can I get them to call the office and ask? They said, yeah, if you get me, but if you get somebody else, they're not going to help you. So I had to get out of the country without them throwing me in jail. And when I walked up to that passport guy, that was probably one of the scariest. Well, knowing that they could throw me, they 100% could throw me, not let me back in the U.S., first of all, but also they could throw me underneath the jail. There was nothing I could do really about it. That was scary. Man. When stuff is out of your control that much,
yeah,
I was like, please let me in. Please.
When you're trying to control what you can control, and then you can't control the thing that you need to control.
I finally get to come back home, I think. And I get there, and he took a long time too. He looked at me, he looked at the passport, he looked at me. He's like, explain to me again why it is that your stamp was way back 10 months ago. And I explained the situation. I showed him the letter. He gave the letter to somebody else. They walked off with it. I was like, that was scary. That was probably one of the scariest things.
That's what's up. Thanks for sharing. All right, give me another number.
Let's go 7.
Everybody always go to 7.
Shit, lucky 7, man. Why not?
I don't know. I'm telling you, a lot of people choose 7 out of these 45 numbers. Yep. Which is the very best Christmas present you have received or given to someone else?
Very best Christmas present I have received. That's a tough one. And then I bet people say that too.
Yes, that's exactly what
it. Very best Christmas present that I ever received.
Or given.
One year I asked for like us to be able to just, for my present, for us to be able to watch movies together and just chill out. And they gave it to me. And that was one of the best presents I ever received. I'm a simple guy, dude. My wife said I'm tough because if I want something, I grind and I get it. That's how it is. Like there's no like waiting period, right, for it. Yeah. I like grind it, I get it, or I choose I don't need it. So they say I'm really hard to be able to shop for it. But that year I just wanted to be able to relax and chill out. And so I knew that the way that I would get the movie that I wanted to watch on the surround sound, and the moment everybody had to put up their phone and everybody had to chill out, and I got that. So that's
what's up. That's what's up. Okay, thanks for sharing on that with that. Watch. Okay, well, hey, to each his own, man. I wasn't looking for that one. Okay, give me the last number.
Last number. You said 1 and 45.
1 through 45.
Let's go with 43. That's how old I am.
What secret have you never told anyone that's funny?
Ooh, secret that's funny. Dude, I don't know. I'm not a secretive guy.
Hey, listen. Hey,
a secret that I never told.
My audience wouldn't necessarily know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Secret that I never told anybody.
That's funny.
That's funny. Oh, okay. Here's what. It's not a secret, but it's funny, man. I was supposed to make the Texas Boys Choir, whatever it is that I was. Right when puberty hit, so it had to be like 12, 13. My voice changed right whenever I was supposed to actually go audition, and I copped out. I never went because I couldn't figure out. I was soprano. I had a high voice. I told you I was a small guy with a high voice, so I was soprano. I could sing soprano. I thought I was gonna be the next Tevin Campbell because I had the same octave range as him, right? And then all the songs that I knew to sing. When he hits that. That was me. That was all day, right? Boys to Men. I actually was in a group like in elementary school, and I sang the high part, the high Boys to Men part, right? And so I thought that was me. And so when my voice changed, then I was like alto-ish. I wasn't baritone bass, but I couldn't stand singing alto parts. And so I didn't know how it is to be able to sing the piece that I was going to be able to sing. And so I copped out.
You told your bros that?
Huh?
Have you told your bros that?
I haven't told anybody that. I don't know. I think my mom may know. That's about it. So I guess that's the secret that's funny. But because I couldn't hit my note, it was all because I couldn't hit that note. It was like, dude, if I can hit this note, I'm out. That was gonna get me in. I was like, I can hold it, hit this note. I was done. So I guess that.
All right. For sure. We appreciate that, man. That was our fun questions. Our fun questions has ended. This is now we got last two questions.
Yeah.
The next question is, which TV dad would you say that you resemble the most and why?
Resemble the most or
Not necessarily
model
look,
them?
but like model the most. I mean, yeah, not necessarily how you
Model the
look,
most.
but like
Man,
the
dude,
characteristics.
I grew up, say what you want about Bill Cosby. I grew up on the Cosby Show. Like that was back in the day when we were growing up, we would all have pizza and we'd all watch the Cosby Show. And that was the family that we most wanted to be like. And some of the lessons that he taught on the Cosby Show, like with Theo and counting out the money and moving out,
Why
all
do
those.
people pause, bro? Like, why do shout out to Tyrus? Why do people always go to pilot episode?
Yeah, I'm telling you, that was when they were the
Everybody
best.
goes to the pilot episode. Do you realize that was literally the very first episode? They only
Yep,
had four
I understand.
kids. They lived in a different place, almost like an apartment. Like everybody goes to the
Everybody
pilot
goes
scene.
because that's when it was pure. Like it was a pure show, and a lot of their stuff was ad libs / acting and them feeding off of each other. After it got to the end, they started bringing in all the people and all the boyfriends and everything else like that. It got a little bit too complicated. I switched over to Different World at that point. Different World was my show, right?
Without Denise though.
Without Denise.
Without Denise.
Different World was it, right? But that show, I still take some of those lessons that I learned from the Cosby Show, and so I would say that would be who it is that model.
That makes sense because he was an encourager, but he also enforced the rules. You know what I'm saying? He joked with them, especially that pilot scene when Theo was talking about, hey, listen, man, why can't you just accept me for who I am? And then he said, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Like my kid, we literally just watched that episode a week ago.
I'm gonna have to watch it with my kids because
my daughter, she watched all the way to season 8 because she enjoyed it that much.
See, I got to go back and we got to watch the Cosby Show because there were so many lessons within that. And anytime he messed up, which was a lot, that was the other thing. It was okay for him to mess up in the episodes and how it is that he made it up and how it is that he honored his wife and all of that kind of stuff. All that lessons was a lot of stuff that we saw. You know, what I mean,
that was still the man. He was still the man in the house.
And that was the first time on TV.
Family Matters. Yeah.
It's first time on TV that we could see that happening inside of a show with a black family. So so definitely.
Sure. That's what's up. All right, last question. What do you I can't believe I forgot my last question. The last question is what would you like? How would you like for your kids to remember you? What would you want them to say about you?
Dude, it's the same thing that I strive for, is to leave a legacy on this earth, to leave this earth better than how I found it. So I would love for them to be able to be proud whenever they hear of something that I've done that left a legacy on this earth that goes beyond me, right? And to say that my dad was associated with that and be proud of that. That and then all for them to be able to say that my dad always showed up whenever he could for me. That's if those two things can happen, then I'm happy smiling down from heaven, right?
That's what's up. That's what's up. Well, this has been a very good, interview for Humble Dad. For all those that are out there, please like, share, comment, subscribe to the podcast. Shout out to Mr. Alistair for, hanging out with us today.
Okay, wait, I got one last question. Last question. You know what the question is already going to be? When I get the T-shirt, man, when do I get the T? That was the part of this negotiation deal. I didn't ask for much. I just said I just want a Humble Dad T-shirt. You said you got to be on the podcast.
Supposed to serve without expectation.
Okay, I see where we're going here. This is a preconceived arrangement that we had, so this is not an expectation. This was a turn.
Just send me your size, bro. Send me your size, man, so I can know. You know what I'm saying? That's hilarious. Hey, listen,
I want to be official, man. I just want I'm a T-shirt collector, so I'm going to have a T-shirt. I got to get one.
Say, you got the last words, man. What would you like to say?
Man, just go out there and be the best that you can be. Always have an impact. But when it comes to your kids, just love on them and appreciate them every single second that you got, because you never know when they stop listening to your voice, but those seeds that you planted start to be able to grow, right?
That's what's up. Well, thank you for your time, bro. If you want to hang out for a moment, we can talk in the background. That's cool too. So we signing off from Humble Dad. Glenn's is how I see it. Y'all have a good one. We out here. Deuces.
Peace.